Cool. Hey, everybody. Start talking today a little bit about what you can't miss if you're on the internet, which is the FTX debacle. Also, just want to give a quick intro to Hayden with minds.com/console phones, new guest on the show. What's up, Hayden?
Hey, we've seen a lot of things going down with FTX. Most of this information I found out against my will, but yeah,
It's hard to avoid.
it's very hard to avoid. This has been compared to the subprime mortgage crash of the crypto industry, although possibly more interesting the more you look into Sam Bankman-Fried.
For sure. It seems like every minute there's like a new craziness coming out about it. It's hard to even keep it in check or what's going on. So we'll do our best to maybe try to explain what happens. So I guess, Sean, the link you got here is kind of almost a tangential part of it, but you did have all these big celebrities promoting FTX and they're all getting sued now. I think one of
Yeah.
the funny parts of that is the Larry David. I don't know if anyone saw the Larry David commercial, but he's literally like playing himself in the commercial pretty much, where they're like trying to pitch him FTX and he's kind of like, I don't know. And, that's getting him sued now. So that's kind of a classic Larry David situation. But I guess I think it's probably better to take a step back and just talk about what's actually happened here. So, Hayden, maybe because you've kind of looked into it in the past couple hours, like what would be your quickest summary of what happened?
So this all started on the 2nd of this month, a fateful day, where headlines came out about Alameda Research's balance sheet. Now, Alameda is a separate company from FTX, although Alameda is owned by Sam Bankman-Fried, so it's kind of a sister company to it. And the best comparison would be a crypto hedge fund. They make, in hindsight, very risky investments and have a close connection to FTX and have been found to use investor funds from FTX to make these risky bets. Now, Alameda Research's balance sheet leaked. It didn't look good. So imagine you loaned your friend $100 and then you discovered that he used all of it to buy baseball cards. Except possibly worse because at least baseball cards have more value than some of these shit coins. Now, if we fast forward 4 days later to the 6th, CZ, the founder and I believe CEO of Binance,
Finance.
the current biggest global. Wait, did I say it wrong? Or
Nope, you're right.
Binance, yeah. Binance, the biggest global crypto exchange, tweeted that he was selling FTT token. FTT token is like stock for FTX. It's connected to Alameda Research and a lot of funds going to it. So CZ was able to sell this because they had a few $1 billion held in FTX tokens. And possibly what has been theorized is that he was intentionally trying to sort of create a bank run on FTX through doing this. He announced that he was selling these FTX tokens on the open market, and the price of it tanked because a lot of people were selling their FTX tokens fearing that it was going to go to zero. And also, a side effect of this was people rightfully assumed that FTX was going to go financially insolvent. So they turned around and then started withdrawing their assets from FTX. Now, later this day, Alameda Research offered to purchase Alameda, again being the sister
I think
company of
it's
FTX.
Alameda.
Oh, am I saying Alameda or
I think
Alameda
so.
Research? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you're
Announced
good.
that they were offering to purchase all of these FTT tokens that Binance had at OTC for, I believe, $22. And the day after this, SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, the sort of owner founder of both of these companies, said that assets were fine. Now, the day after this, on the 8th, FTX agreed to sell to Binance. So, for perspective, this is the largest crypto company in the world, offering to buy the second largest one on a bank run that was created by a single tweet. Now, later this day, SBF deleted his tweet that he made yesterday saying that assets were fine. And then the day after this, there was a report that I believe broke on CoinDesk that Binance was starting to think that the deal was going to be a bad idea. And then the day after this, FTX froze all assets. So you couldn't withdraw, you couldn't deposit. Your money was basically inaccessible. This entire purchasing deal fell apart. And then the day after that, FTX filed for bankruptcy, and they've now seeking bankruptcy protection in the United States. initially it didn't affect the American division of FTX. There's two separate versions. It's like ftx.com and ftx.us. But now both exchanges seem to be affected, and the entire FTX empire has gone under.
Yeah, thanks for that timeline. It's been hard to keep up with everything because every minute there's like new stuff coming out. But I guess one of the things that is interesting to me is just the coverage of it in general. And a lot of people on Twitter are kind of up in arms because, the New York Times basically published a piece right out in the aftermath of this, and everybody was kind of expecting them to, really take him down. This is like one of the biggest scandals probably of all time. It's like even worse than like Enron, to be honest. And they basically wrote this whole piece, and if you look through it, I think people on Twitter are laughing. They didn't mention like the word fraud a single time. They basically wrote almost like a puff piece about Sam and how he's like not able to sleep anymore. And it's like about how stressed he is, and it wasn't about like all the horrible things he did. So that started getting people all kind of riled up because, how does one of the biggest mainstream news outlets cover this so poorly? And then today it broke. Maybe Sean, pop over to that event from the New York Times.
Yeah,
Yeah. So this broke.
It looked fake. Yeah.
Yeah, we weren't sure if it was fake because it's like almost unbelievable that the New York Times had an event scheduled for 2 weeks from now with Sam Bankman-Fried, Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. You got the chairman of BlackRock. You got the Yellen, head of the Department of Treasury. There's Zuckerberg was going. I mean, so we had to fact check it, and it is real. The event seems to be real.
Yeah, like it's interesting. Like this guy, so he was the youngest billionaire ever, though, right? Like he did come into like a ton of money at one point.
Well,
or was it all fake too? Like
that's the question. I mean, some of the bankruptcy documentation's coming out. I put it in the chat here, Sean. If you want to pull it up, it's pretty intense. Yeah. But so basically, I think they hired the guy who basically dealt with the Enron aftermath to be the CEO of FTX and basically deal with all of the bankruptcy like proceedings. But if you scroll down there to point number 5, I thought that was a good summary from his point of view. Yeah, right there. He says, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. From compromised systems integrity and faulty regulatory oversight board to the concentration of control in the hands of a very small group of inexperienced, unsophisticated, and potentially compromised individuals, the situation is unprecedented." And this is coming from the guy who dealt with Enron, which he says in the paragraph before. And he's also dealt with some of the craziest like problems of all time. So you have that guy saying that this is the biggest failure that he's ever seen and that it's unprecedented.
The question is like, did he really have the money to back it up? And Joe Rogan brought up, I guess Elon told him that I guess this Bankman went to Elon and said, when Elon was purchasing Twitter, he's like, "Hey man, I'm in for $3 billion." And I guess that turned Elon off. He was like, my bullshit alarms went off immediately.
Well, that's probably easy for Elon to say now, but
true.
Yeah, he did. There was text leaked, and Elon was actually being pretty skeptical. It seemed in the text, but
apparently billionaires don't give each other billions of dollars, which is unfortunate because that's how I thought it worked. I was hoping one day.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a pretty sad story. I mean, there's like billions of dollars in customer retail funds that are no longer accessible, and then there's been this domino effect because like FTX had their tentacles in so many other projects, whether it's from their investment arm, the Alameda that Hayden was talking about. Like, for example, BlockFi was a company that had gotten like humongous, and they are now most likely having to file for bankruptcy as well because I think they were just relying on FTX for a lot of liquidity. So you sort of have this like domino effect of other companies that were kind of like leveraging FTX that are now also suffering. So at the end of the day, it's actually like a horrible event, and a lot of people have lost a ton of money, basically because this guy was. I mean, as the guy says here, it was just a complete failure of like corporate controls. Like the more you read into it, the crazier it is to believe it all. It's like this doc also goes to say, I forget where it is, but I think SBF gave himself like $3 billion for personal use. They also were giving
and he transferred
giving each other money to like buy houses in the Bahamas. So they were like using this money to like do whatever the hell they wanted with.
As
they
you
were,
do.
Like they were using it to invest in companies. They were using it to buy their own houses, like just complete irresponsible actions. And it just makes it even more hard to believe that the New York Times would write such like a puff piece about it. That's what really confuses me.
It's crazy too, like with the government's like situation. Like again, like he gave a lot of money to his mom too, who ran an organization called, I think, like Get Out Now or something. It was like kind of like boots on the ground strategy to get people out to vote for the Democrats. And I guess they invested, it was like 40 million in Biden's campaign, which is a lot. So it's a lot of money.
Yeah, I think he was the number 2 donor. He did donate. He did give some to the Republicans, I saw too, which was way less. It was way less, but like that still kind of confused me a little bit. But
usually billionaires like that, you'll see. I think even Zuckerberg has, who's like generally people say is like, massive left winger. He's also donated to Republican candidates too, I believe. They all just kind of spread out their influence to try to avoid having
really? I didn't
unfavorable.
Know that.
Yeah.
Well, it gets into that. Yeah, it's like, why are they donating? Like, is it to actually support the campaigns, or is it to like, get special privileges in certain scenarios? Like, what do you guys think in terms of like, what are those donations even like for?
It's legitimization, totally. Like if like, here's the thing, Bankman knew if he said, we're going to invest $3 billion in Twitter, that's going to shoot his stock up. Like people are going to be like, oh man, this is amazing. Like, it's all about like legitimizing the con, I guess. If it truly is a con, then they have to buy influence.
It seems like he was like a master at it, because he had everybody convinced that he was like this young like crypto all-star billionaire guy, but at the end of the day he was like none of that. And it's really sad. And the other thing that's a bummer about it is that it kind of like paints this ugly picture for crypto. But at the end of the day, this actually has nothing to do with crypto. And like, in my opinion, it actually just more so explains why crypto is so important. Like what happened here is not crypto. This is like what happens with the banks, where you have all of this like problems with having to trust these centralized groups with your money or your transactions or whatever it is. So, it's just interesting that this kind of like crypto kind of takes a beating from this, but like if you actually understand the value prop of real crypto like Bitcoin, it's trying to move away from this type of stuff and have a more trustless system where you kind of have your own ownership of your funds, and you can actually not have to rely on these central middlemen who keep just abusing everyone's trust. So I think that's been one of the interesting ripple effects, is just that like it paints this ugly picture of crypto, but in some ways it also more so explains why Bitcoin is so important to try to get away from that type of thing.
I think that's definitely I think a lot of people have issues with that. They really have issues with trusting in crypto, because you get these types of weird situations that happen.
But this wasn't trusting in crypto, is my point. Right. This was trusting in SBF and FTX.
But their branding was all around crypto. I mean, like you said, like
they were master marketers at like making you think it's crypto, but really it was just a total con job. It's seeming more and more like. But yeah, one of the other interesting things I wanted to just bring up is like, go to Elon's tweet, Sean.
Sure.
So he says coverage of FTX meltdown is incomparably faster and better quality on Twitter than old school media. So this is a really interesting conversation. I feel like is like, I personally have been getting, I would agree with them here that I've been getting much better information about it all than from Twitter than I have from like that New York Times piece. However, I think where he says better quality is where it probably can be debated because there's so much like noise on Twitter and like you don't even know as much how much of it's real and like whether it's accurate. But at the same time, you know, you read the New York Times and it's hard for me to understand how accurate that is because of like all of the, you know, potential favors in play or whatever covering for whoever. I mean, he clearly was buying influence all over the place. There was also a good Vox article that came out last night. He was like, SBF was like DMing with this Vox journalist, like saying some ridiculous stuff. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No.
He was basically just like trying to explain himself, sort of, and like just like kind of a sad worldview.
Did he talk about the sex cult aspect? Because that's
no. I don't think that came up. Although I keep seeing on Twitter that some sex tape's gonna get leaked. So like, geez, that'll be stay away from that video. But
I mean, I guess technically, like I was saying before the show, technically he's polyamorous and it was a polyamorous lifestyle, and there are like certain situations where people can make an argument, okay, polyamorous lifestyle or whatever. But yeah, a lot of times they devolve into craziness. Like it just seems like an unsustainable concept. I've always thought it was just like, you know,
polyamorous is also different than all living together in the same house.
Yeah, I think, and they were all of them were his employees too. So
he was also naming them all like CFO and like he was not just employees. He was giving them like complete control. And I saw some of the employees saying they were like, I don't know why that should have been a bigger red flag when he was naming these people who had zero experience, like, you know, the top dogs at this company that was like worth billions all of a sudden. So
interesting.
But yeah, what do you guys think about the whole like? It seems like there's a shift almost in like news and like, do you trust these old school mainstream media or do you trust like what's going on social media? Like, what do you guys like more?
Yeah, Hayden, what are the young people like?
Yeah, I've mainly been looking at like CoinDesk has done a pretty good job with their reporting of it. Usually the good thing is if you see multiple outlets reporting it, because all the stories about this thing where it's like a single outlet that wrote an article on it, usually there's a reason that only one outlet is reporting it. So that's at least how I approach it.
Yeah, I think like what we did with this one where it just looked so fake. Sometimes like I see stuff now and like the skeptic alert goes off and I'm like, all right, is this real? You know, and you have to try and find like multiple sources. So it's harder now, you know, instead of being able
I think that's key though. It's like people need to like remember that. Like, remember when the internet first was like kind of taken off and like, you know, Wikipedia, everyone was like in school, they were like, never cite Wikipedia. Like that's total BS. Yet now people just like, now you see a tweet from some like anime avatar anonymous person.
Exactly.
You believe it at surface level and like you can just get so tricked. So like people really need to remember that like you should not trust what you see on the internet like right away at face value. You need to really like do research and like people are lazy. So that's what scares me.
There's a
exactly. This is my point. This is Nancy Pelosi's stock tracker. Am I getting my news from them or am I getting my news from like the New York Times? It's like I don't know.
So for people in the audience, we did confirm it was a real event, and Sam would have been there.
Yeah,
The
I'm
CEO
shocked they haven't taken him off this page yet. Like, what are they?
I know.
You'd think someone on their website team would have like seen that tweet and rushed to there.
Oh my
But, like,
God!
what is this event? Like, this event is nuts. Like, you have Zuckerberg, Zelensky, Janet Yellen, SBF, Mike Pence. Like, this is a ridiculous event.
So is
kinda looks like
Bankman
fun.
still
Talk about
sticking with?
security.
Yeah.
Well, and
it shows how much he's tricked everyone. Like, it's like, how did he get into this crew?
There's no reason that like SBF should be on the same lineup as like Netanyahu and Eric Adams and like Larry Finn.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is, like, especially with like the bigger political events, the way it works is, unlike our events, Jack, where we cover people's costs to come to our events and speak. Like, people will pay outlets like the New York Times and stuff like a ton of money to get like a speaking slot in one of these style events. And that's kind of like the backdoor stuff that a lot of people don't talk about. In some cases, they'll pay others to be there or whatever, but some people, like this guy, can pay a ton of money to be on the stage. And
you
it's
got
crazy.
the CEO of TikTok over there. I didn't even know who that guy was.
I know. I have a feeling Bankman's going to be living in China soon. He's gonna be. Is he gonna go to jail, Jack? What do you think? Is he going to jail?
I don't know. I mean, you would think so, but I think Hayden mentioned he might have, or people found that his jet fled to Argentina. It's unconfirmed if he was on there.
Yeah, there's no way to know if he was actually on the jet, although I would not be shocked if he dipped out after this. I mean, he could.
I saw someone posted a picture of like him in like a grocery store in like the Bahamas, but like again, like I don't know how old that picture is. So it just goes.
I can't imagine he's going grocery shopping.
No, me either. But like that's
I think the Bahamas has Instacart at least. I mean,
someone on Twitter, like, how many people believe that type of thing, like at face value? That's what kind of scares me. It's like you're like, oh my God, it goes viral, and but people don't realize like, oh, that picture was actually from 6 years ago or something. Like, who knows?
Yeah, I mean, like a white dude with poorly maintained hair isn't exactly hard to find in a grocery store. So if it's from the back, you never know. But
one of the funnier takes I've seen on him is, and I've never played League of Legends. I don't know if you have, Hayden, but people are like saying that he spent like 10 years playing this game and like never made it past like level 3 or something. And like people were like saying that was the hardest thing to believe, is that like someone can play a game that long and not rank up.
Yeah, but, I mean, $1 billion fraud is one thing, but like sucking at League after 10 years, that's almost worse. I don't know how that's possible.
That's hilarious.
I mean, at the end of the day, it is really sad. I think he should go to jail, and there's a lot of questions because like he was funding the Democrats and the Republicans. Like, where was he getting this money? I think people keep saying there's some connection between Ukraine and FTX. I haven't actually dug in enough to know what it is, but
well, I think what it is, it's because he donated to the Democrats. Some of that money went to Ukraine, and apparently some of it might be coming back to the people that originally sent it, but no one really knows.
Now there's this whole clawback process of like people trying to find where the money went and where they can get it back so they can pay back some of these, poor retail people who got screwed by this.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Hayden.
Yeah, I've seen I don't know if FTX was part of this crowd, although there were a lot of crypto exchanges and like NFT projects that did charity for Ukraine. So that might be a reason people were linking to it. Some people were trying to argue that like he conspired with Zelensky to support Biden, so Biden would give money to Ukraine.
There's some.
I mean, if this was true, I think he could have done more than $5 million to buy that much influence. But
I guess the people in the Bahamas are selling their crypto that they had or whatever they had through him through NFTs to try and get their money back, which I was like, ooh, you're taking the money out of one bad investment, you're putting it in the NFTs. It's like, ugh. But apparently that's the only way they can get their money. I guess the Bahamas is the only place accepting this, whatever it was right now. I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's not a good story overall, but I mean, I think that's why the New York Times piece was like bothering so many people though, because there's so many questions that we even just mentioned, like what's the tie to Zelensky? What's the tie with Biden? What's the tie with the Republicans? Like, who knows? And like, they didn't even like broach that at all. Like, they didn't even mention that he was a political donor. So that's pretty strange to me that like the New York Times would make some huge piece about this and it wouldn't be like the hard hitting journalism that you think you would get from them.
Well, he's speaking at their event.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. It's just like, did he buy them off? Like, what? Why are they being so friendly to him?
Oh,
like,
totally, dude. Yeah. That would be my 100% guess. Is he gave them a ton of money that they couldn't say no to? You know,
the customers' money.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And yeah, it's interesting, like, to see if, like, what if they're named in the lawsuit? Like, I don't know how this is going to play out, but it's going to be a lawsuit, right? It's going to be like a huge trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
maybe. I think there's some weirdness too, because well, it was like not a U.S. company. There's like FTX US, so there's some weirdness with like the corporate structure. There's a picture of it, and it's like the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. Like, there's 1,000 entities all over the place. Like, you could never know what's going on. And I think that's what the new CEO is kind of saying, is that like there was all these silos that like weren't properly managed at all, and like they weren't keeping records of anything, and they were just being so irresponsible with all this money. It's like hard to believe, to be honest. Like, I don't know how this guy would sleep at night at all. Like,
well, unless you think
about 4 or 5 people to sleep with, so he was
yeah.
Also
just fine.
I guess so. Yeah, distract himself with his polyfuel.
I mean, just look at this guy. It has, mom's basement written all over him.
But that's what was like funny about him when he like rose, was everyone was like, who is this like, nerdy
but let's be
guy
fair.
with like,
yeah.
He kind of looks like him, like.
Also, for sure. Most people in the tech platforms don't necessarily, dress up, but he.
Well, this is quite the cast of characters. We might have to attend this event. Like,
well, why does Zelensky and Zuckerberg have the same haircut?
Oh shit! We may have uncovered something. It's the same barber.
This is a conspiracy.
There's just a singular barber violating all of the major world figures.
Yeah, that's the new world. That's the new world order.
Yeah.
Bagman kind of looks like Destiny. I'm gonna put Destiny on blast.
Oh god!
Looks like Steven.
Someone needs to meme that out. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Twin brothers.
People are also just laughing that his name is literally Bankman, which
I know.
Like, the crypto savior's name is Bankman.
Yeah,
he,
and you can say freed if you want, but I just see fried, like stoner.
Yeah, he's done. He's done. Well, it'll be interesting to like see, like, if he truly had $13 billion, if he truly had $13 billion, he could pay back the $11 billion that he owes. But that's, like, Elon obviously put up a ton of money for Twitter. So there's some people that have that kind of wealth. But I guess that's part of like the problem. It's like, is it just another story? I mean, it's just like, why does the government keep falling for this? Like Biden and Obama were in for Elizabeth Holmes's or what's her the medical company.
Yeah, you got it. Theranos, right?
Yeah, Theranos. Yeah, Theranos. And they did like plant tours, and they were like on site, and they were like looking at the like everything, like, oh, this looks fine,
I mean, like Sequoia, like one of the biggest VCs in the world, had like a memo on their website. Maybe they took it down by now, but it was like the notes from like their meeting with SBF, and like they were all just like googly eyed over this guy. It's just like crazy. He tricked like the smartest, he tricked the most famous people in the world, like all of them.
Yeah, I think BlackRock was even invested in. They're like, what? Aren't they one of the top firms in the world by now, even globally?
Well, maybe Larry Fink can tell us at this New York Times event.
Yeah.
Well, BlackRock, yeah. I mean, that's it's interesting watching the distrust of the big economic superpowers. It's the people with like no one trusts the billionaires anymore. It's interesting. I think Elon gets a pass right now, but
well, who do you trust? You don't trust the billionaires. Can't really trust the Janet Yellen stock trading Twitter account. So it's hard to know who to listen to in this day and age.
I do my part. I try not to order Amazon. Like if I can go to a store, I'll go to a store. I try and keep that,
I did see, because I think like Twitter, in my opinion, has been undeniably better at breaking what's happening here, than anywhere else. However, like there is so much noise, and it's so easy for people to paste fake stuff that like it's hard to know exactly what of it's true. So like they sort of have that problem, and the same things on Minds. And like one thing that I found was interesting that we've talked about a lot at Minds is like how to indicate like a reputation of a user, or like how trustworthy they are on like a given subject, because people are obviously experts in, like, you wouldn't listen to Elon Musk about like, farming, but you might listen to him about like rocket engineering, like because of his background. So I did see Twitter was talking about adding like credentials, and there's a whole project called Verified Credentials, which is like a decentralized attempt at this, which I think is better. But I think Twitter might be considering like a LinkedIn style like creds, where you can like verify where you've worked and like what you've done. And then that's the type of context that can help, if you present it correctly, that you can help like, okay, this person who's telling me this, like, do they have any idea what they're talking about, or are they just like a total rando? So
if it was decentralized, I can see that being nice, but obviously if it was centralized, like who decides who's an expert?
Yeah, there's a whole thing called verifiable credentials that like Jack Dorsey's been going hard on with like Square and Block or whatever that's called now. And we've looked into it, and that's what it is. It's like finding decentralized ways of verifying people's creds, like where they went to college, what their major was, where they worked, like what they, so then you can start, you just more context on the social media posts so that you can actually make a little bit better of a decision on how trustworthy it is. I think that's what we need to go. I think we need to get into like reputation like that, so that you can, because people are too lazy. It's like, you need to put as much of that info up front to at least give people like an idea of how trustworthy it is, in my opinion. But that's it. I think it's one of the hardest problems that we have to solve. It's like a human race, is like how to get trustworthy information. And then you get into all the problems of like, people can take the same exact news story and splice it up in totally different ways. That's like CNN versus Fox. It's like, but
the perception of truth
conversation.
I heard a really interesting argument in support of misinformation. It was somebody was on Tim Pool's show. I'll have to look up the episode. But it was an older guy talking about the earliest days of the internet, and I forget which search engine or company he worked for, but he was talking about the misinformation back then, and they would they would allow as much misinformation as possible, and everybody that was part of the internet back then just knew, because there was so much spam information that they had to research whatever topic it was and find multiple sources. They knew they had to do that work because of the fact there was so much excess misinformation. So it's kind of
it seems like we've forgotten that, though. Like people don't research anything, really, it seems.
It's true.
Some people do. That I shouldn't make generalizations like that, actually. But a lot of people don't, I think, is pretty true.
Well, yeah, I think that's what like social media's train people. It's not to be wrong. Like if you're gonna put something out there, make sure you at least have some type of understanding of the thing that, the thing that you're commenting on. Yeah, because I've fallen for it. I've seen like fake news where I've retweeted it or whatever. I thought it was legit, and yeah, it sucks. You have egg on your face. Like,
I saw a video just the other day of like a dog like riding on a dolphin's back in the ocean, and it was like dolphin like saves dog, and I was like, holy shit, that is insane. And then I like went to the comments, and it was like some guy was like, oh, this is from the movie. Like it was from some movie.
Yeah.
But the person who made the original post was like trying to trick people, which actually is more disinformation, I believe. There's kind of a difference between whether there's intent behind it or not.
Yeah, that's where the disinformation thing. Yeah, it's really tough. Like if people are out, but then sometimes what somebody considers disinformation is actually just misinformation. If the person was misinformed in the beginning, which it's a whole nother layer.
I think a lot of people are lazy in that like they wouldn't research a topic. Maybe they just believe whatever celebrity they're, a person they're following on Twitter. However, I think with the excess amount of misinformation out there, a lot of people have moved towards a direction of what Hayden was talking about, of looking to multiple sources online and not just using one major outlet as their one source. So I think that is one benefit of it. I'd say.
Yeah, it's replaced television. Like growing up as a kid, like that's where we got all our information was like the television, local news, AOL.
It's never been so easy for people to share information. Like back in the day, it was like you couldn't even tell people if you wanted to.
You had to still go to the library. Like you were saying, Jack, yeah, you couldn't cite. Like I was even before the Wikipedia, like the internet was still like very early. So we had to still go to the library and like find books.
Sources.
Yeah, find sources. I mean,
that's what you used to have to do. Like if you're making a real point. Yeah, if you're trying to make a real point, you need to like cite things. And like that's kind of gone out the window. And we've talked about adding something like that on Minds, which Twitter's actually got their community notes or Birdwatch, which is something we've thought about, is like even just like adding like a citation tool on posts. I don't know if anyone would use it, but like that's sort of what we need to start doing again, it seems.
Yeah, and that's what Wikipedia kind of, I do give them a lot of credit for that, because at least that's the platform's built on.
Well, we've firsthand though, like witnessed some of the issues with Wikipedia. Like they won't let us even like
they screw over.
They just call us far right. They call Minds far right, despite all of our work with Daryl, and they disregard all that stuff. So there's definitely like still like a subjectivity to Wikipedia. But I agree, Wikipedia, and all things considered, is like an amazing thing that
the original concept
done.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They've created this like economy of people that's their job, is they change people's Wikipedia pages, which is crazy that if it's your page, you should be able to go on there and be like, hey, I'm the thing.
So what is they actually punish that, because I kind of get, because they don't want people like turning their Wikipedia page into a sales pitch. It's supposed to be like objective, but like when it's supposed to be objective is the problem, and some of the editors are clearly not acting that way, which is the problem in my mind.
So how do you become an editor, of Rapport?
I mean, they have one of the better like reputation systems, like community, decentralized governance things of anywhere. So like I give them a lot of credit for what they've built, but it just shows that even that type of system can get subjective at the end of the day.
Polarized. Yeah.
But you have to like fight your way up there. You have to like grow up in the ranks basically, and like build up a reputation from like making changes that are confirmed. I think Hayden knows better than I do.
Yeah, it's a tiered system where I think there's certain like site level access levels where it's kind of approved by the Wikipedia Foundation. Although once people make a certain amount of accepted high quality edits, they get an increased rank in the community. So of course it's not perfect. You'll still see like biased editors. Although Wikipedia, its advantage is it's at a side where people, of course, are still going to have their individual biases with editing. Although if you have enough people with individual biases, it kind of averages out, which is why even on controversial subjects, most of the information on Wikipedia is relatively accurate to like a good extent, and it includes multiple citations, which is a lot more that can be said than like even news publications. Since I mean,
yeah, that's true.
yeah,
I guess
yeah, you almost never
I've
see a
never
news
even
article with citations.
had a problem with them, like, because on the Minds page, for example, like in the header, it calls us like far right and like cites like one Vice article that smeared us once, and like I don't even have a problem with that being there because it happened, like that is a real article that happened, and my problem is just that they like seem to be selective of what facts to include and what to ignore, like so.
Right.
But all things considered, I do think it's like one of the better attempts at
it's
a more decentralized like process. Like we want to do something similar on Minds with like content moderation. It's like, is that just something Minds is in charge of, or like can we find a way where like community members can kind of like earn reputation to like get the trust of the community to like do that, and then it's kind of out of our hands. So
it's like a good first. It's a good first stop. It's always like the good first source to look at, and then like to confirm it from there.
Cool.
Yeah, but yeah, we have some guests coming up next week. I'm excited. So Hayden, I don't know if you can join us again next week. That'd be awesome. Yeah, it's pretty low maintenance. We just kind of come on and talk about whatever's happening. So yeah, you want to take us out, Jack?
Yeah, sure. Tune in to next week. We got some cool guests coming, and yeah, we're also going to be trying to find some Minds all-stars to join. So if you're interested, hit us up. But yeah, thanks for listening.